If you're tired of the consumerism that takes over every December, or the religious traditions you grew up with no longer feel like home, you're not alone. Many people are looking for a quieter, more grounded way to celebrate the season, something that feels connected to nature, to time, to meaning. As the wheel of the year turns, Yule marks one of its most powerful moments, the deep stillness of midwinter, when darkness reaches its peak and the promise of light begins again. Yule marks the end of the solar cycle. It falls on the winter solstice, when the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky in the northern hemisphere. It's the shortest day and longest night of the year. In the far north, above the Arctic Circle, the sun disappears completely below the horizon for 3 days. To ancient people, it looked as though the sun had died. When it finally rose again, it was a sign of hope. The light was returning and life would continue. The hardest part of winter was still ahead, but this moment marked the promise that the world would turn again. From that came one of humanity's oldest festivals, Yule, a celebration of endurance, warmth, and the return of the sun. The word comes from the Old Norse, Yule, and Old English, Yule, and its customs were woven from the Old Northern and Celtic ways, Scandinavian, Germanic, and Pagan. So why celebrate Yule? 1. To honor the turning of the wheel. Yule marks a natural turning point in the cycle of the earth. For our ancestors, this was more than a date on a calendar. It was proof that even in the cold and the dark, life continues to move forward. Celebrating Yule reminds us that endings and beginnings are never separate. They're part of the same eternal motion. 2. To reconnect with nature. Modern life often pulls us away from natural rhythm. Yule brings us back. It reminds us to look at the bare trees, the frozen ground, the long nights, and see not emptiness, but rest. The earth itself is sleeping. In slowing down with it, we find balance. 3. To welcome the return of the light. At the heart of Yule is the fire. The Yule log, the candles, the hearth's glow, they all represent the sun's slow return. Lighting a flame during this time is an act of faith in warmth and renewal. It's a small gesture that echoes thousands of years of hope. 4. To honor the Holly King, the Oak King, and the Green Man. These ancient figures from Celtic and pagan traditions represent the living spirit of the seasons. The Holly King rules the dark half of the year and gives way to the Oak King as the light returns. The Green Man rests in winter, waiting to rise again in spring. Celebrating Yule keeps these old stories alive, reminding us that the natural world has its own spirit, always cycling between death and rebirth. 5. To remember the ancestors. In many parts of Europe, Yule was the time to remember those who came before. People left offerings by the hearth, believing their ancestors watched over them during the hardest season. Today, we still find that same pull, the bittersweet mix of joy and longing when we think of loved ones during the holidays. Remembering them at Yule gives that emotion a sacred place to live. 6. To celebrate community and generosity. Winter was the season when people needed each other the most. Villages gathered, food was shared, and songs were sung to keep spirits warm. The gifts exchanged weren't about wealth, they were about survival and love. To celebrate Yule is to return to that spirit of giving, simple, heartfelt, and human. 7. To find rest and reflection. Yule sits in the quiet between the old year and the new one. It's a time to pause, look back, and listen to what your life is asking for next. In stillness, the mind clears and the heart softens. Yule reminds us that rest is not laziness, it's a necessary part of the cycle of renewal. 8. To step away from consumerism and return to meaning. Yule invites us to pull back from the endless push to buy and consume. It reminds us that value doesn't come from what we spend, but from what we share. By making gifts with our hands or giving from the heart, we save money, but we restore meaning to the season. A simple jar of herbs, a handwritten letter, a handmade ornament, these carry more warmth than anything purchased in a rush. 9. to create or renew tradition. Yule can be celebrated on its own or woven into existing holidays. Adding a Yule log to your Christmas fire, lighting candles on the solstice, or hanging greenery, as ancient people once did, helps bridge the old with the new. For many, this blending creates a sense of continuity, a way to bring spiritual depth back into modern celebrations. 10. To feel a sense of belonging to something older. Yule connects us to something vast, a thread stretching back thousands of years to people who also looked to the night sky and waited for the light to return. Celebrating it isn't about recreating the past, but about remembering we belong to it. It's a quiet affirmation that we are part of a lineage of humans who endured, hoped, and found joy, even in the dark. Yule carries an old rhythm, the steady turning of light and dark, the quiet balance between rest and renewal. As the wheel of the year turns, each solstice reminds us that even the darkest point contains the beginning of new light. When you hang greenery, make a stew, or light a candle, you take part in a story that's been told for thousands of years. It's a reminder that warmth and hope return, no matter how long the night feels. So what about you? Have you ever celebrated Yule, or do you think you might this year? Tell me below, and your story might help someone else find their own way back to the light.